putting on our spotlights right to the most talked about deliberations by the Senate as we speak.
Definitely, of course, we're talking about the Electoral Act amendment and the growing debate over electronic transmissions of election results, also known as the e-transmission. Now, in recent days, you know that the National Assembly, especially the Senate, has been considering changes to Nigeria's Electoral Act. And one of the most controversial parts of the amendment is the decision not to clearly approve electronic transmission of results from polling units. And this decision has raised serious concerns among civil society groups, election observers, and many Nigerians who believe that electronic transmission helps reduce manipulation and improves transparency during elections. The disagreement has also led to public protests at the National Assembly, with citizens calling on lawmakers to protect the credibility of future elections, especially ahead of the 2027 general elections. Supporters of the e-transmission argue that Nigeria has already used technology like the Beaver system successfully, and that transmitting results electronically would further strengthen trust in the electoral process. Others say that the issue should not depend on infrastructure, or rather that the issue should depend on infrastructure and security considerations. So right now, what does this amendment really mean for Nigeria's democracy? Does removing clear support for e-transmission weaken election transparency? These are some of the questions that we are asking. And of course, to help us understand this issue better, we are joined by Jennifer Dafwat, the Communications Officer at YIAGA Africa, a leading civil society organization working on electoral reforms and citizen participation. Hello, Jennifer. Good morning and welcome to the conversation. Hello, Jennifer. Good morning and welcome to the conversation.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes,
can hear
good
you now.
morning, Jennifer.
Thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome.
All right.
And thank
Let,
you for having me too.
all right. Let's get your thought. What's your stance on the electoral amendment so far?
One of the things that makes or shows that we're making progress, I think, as a people and as a democracy, is our ability to adapt and to continually make the changes necessary to make our process, better. And so these electoral amendments, there was an electoral amendment in 2022,
True.
just leading up to the 2023 elections. And so at this juncture also, we are taking lessons from the 2023 elections to say these are the things that will help us achieve better elections in 2027. So really, that's what the electoral amendment is for, and that's what we're pushing for, in this period, in this season.
And of course, saying that the National Assembly, of course, you saw the protests going on. Young Nigerians are on the street protesting the fact that the Senate has not approved the e-transmission of results so far, taking leeway as well from the 2023 election, where the Beavers worked as in some part as well. The IRF portal also worked in some part. And just last year, the Anambra election also happened, and there was real-time transmission of results, on the IRF portal. But we're also seeing that the Senate is saying that one of the challenges that they are having, as to why they're not giving a full consent on the e-transmission is because of internet facility in some states as it is. Do you think this is reason enough why the e-transmission should not be allowed to function?
No, so we just yesterday, YIAGA Africa, as part of in a joint press statement with other civil society organizations, clarified this issue of infrastructure. And if you remember, at the time when the Beavers was introduced and the former INEC chairman,
Professor Mahmoud
Professor
Yakubu.
Mahmoud, yes, Yakubu, one of the things he kept reiterating in different stakeholder engagements that we had was the fact that the Beavers machine did not require or does not require a 5G or a 4G network as we will require for, high streaming or media download and things like that. And so with as little as a 2G and a 3G network, the beavers is able to make an upload. And, I mentioned that this was clarified in our press statement, the press conference yesterday, that there was a committee that was set up in, I think, 2022 or 2023 that shows that at least 90% of polling units across Nigeria have some level of network to facilitate the beavers working. And so when we focus on the issue of infrastructure as a reason not to progress, it begins to call to question what exactly it is that we want. Are we rather making excuses, or are we looking for solutions? So let's not just focus on the issue of infrastructure and say that, oh, Nigeria is not able to. The data actually shows that Nigeria is able to or has some form of infrastructure to enable the beavers work and to transmit elections electronically. So these issues, when it comes to infrastructure, I don't think that's the big issue. I really think that that's just a diversion tactic to draw our attention away from the main issue. The main issue here is that there is, based on data from the NCC and based on communication from INEC in the past, it has said that it has the capacity to transmit election results electronically. Okay, so let's give them the opportunity to do that, and then we can see what the gaps and what the lapses are. And to be honest, I will draw from our experience in Anambra, which is one of the most recent off-cycle elections. I think before midnight of of election day, we had over 90% of results uploaded on the IREV. And so you are looking at some of these areas are in remote areas. And so yes, I know that when we come to the larger Nigeria context, we're dealing with much more polling units and, a larger numbers. But then the test run has shown these things have been done in the past, that there is a possibility. So let's focus on what's possible. And even if there are challenges, how we can close the gap.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you so much for that. But you have stated that Nigeria might, right? INEC might be able to carry out the electoral process, and they have said that everything is being put in order. And you still made mention of the fact that this is the exact same thing that was said during the 2023 presidential election, where the INEC said, we are ready, we have the infrastructure, we have what it takes, we have what it takes to... There's a playback, Jennifer. There's a playback from your system. Can you hear me clearly now? Hello, Jennifer. Oh, I think there we go again about the network. There we go again about the network. But I mean, she has made mention of the fact that we might have the capacity. It's different from saying, when someone says, I am ready, and they are actually ready. It's two different things, because they did this whole test run. They went back and forth about the beavers. We are ready. We have what it takes. And just last week, I was at a forum organized by INEC. And in that conversation, they were talking about how, listen, during the 2023 presidential election, it was quite difficult because they didn't expect the number of people who were keen on knowing what the result for the presidential election alone was. So the traffic went so much to that angle, and then we know how the system is. We cannot deny the fact that we do not know how the system is, especially when it comes to technology. And it's important for us to also note that Nigeria is ranked the 105th out of 139 countries. And this is a statistics that was that came about by GII for 2025, which means that we are still far behind when it comes to the use and the application of technology. Right. So why is it that when we come to the electoral front, we try to think that it is terrible everywhere, but it must be good when it comes to the electoral system. And I'm trying to be as realistic as possible in this conversation. Maybe the Senate, trying to explore possible areas that the Senate would have looked at. Right. Remember, sometime last year, we're talking about how these MDAs, we're supposed to stop using the whole paperwork and everything, and now focus on using. Do we have Stephanie on the line so that we can Jennifer, rather? Jennifer, are you back with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, thank you very much. Let's cut out our thoughts and get on to you. Yeah. So I was going to ask you, you said INEC has said countlessly that they are prepared for the elections. They have done a test run and they think that they can go ahead with the elections transmitting electronically. Now, I want you to also understand that it's one thing to be actually prepared and it's one thing to think that they are prepared. And I'm saying that because in the 2023 presidential election, we had almost the same issue where INEC said that they had beavers. Over 300, I think it was a billion naira was set aside for that election. And that has almost doubled in this election. About 1 trillion naira now have been allocated for elections. But, the INEC chairman at the time said they were ready, only for us to get into the elections and we had glitches. And I also want you to have it at the back. I want you to also come to the fact that out of 139, Nigeria is ranked about 105 in the use of technology. We have seen it play out with internet connection, which also was a disruption that we just experienced right now. Difficult to do every other thing, especially when it comes to technology. Why do we just automatically, suddenly think that when it comes to elections, this must work, when we have seen it glitch in several other areas?
Right. Thank you for that. And I will start by highlighting what you said that INEC thinks. INEC doesn't think. The data shows that, and it's not just from INEC, NCC corroborates that data to say that over 90% of the polling units that we have in Nigeria have some form of network connection, at least minimum 2G connection. Mm-hmm. And the clarification here is that when the push for real-time electronic transmission also doesn't mean that as you are voting, immediately you're done voting, we are able to see what the results are. No, it just means that as soon as that the electoral process is concluded within that polling unit, immediately the electoral officer is able to transmit, which is to use the beavers to upload the election result, which is the form EC8A. So what we are saying is, at the point of collation at the polling unit, at the ward level, at the local government, we want to see these results being uploaded as soon as that process is concluded. Because what we currently have is that the results will be concluded and then we have a lag in time, which gives room for human interference. And so it is that gap that we're trying to close. So that's to say that between the polling unit and the ward, once the upload is done at the polling unit, you're sure that between that polling unit and before the electoral officers get to the ward level, there is going to be internet connection, or there's some form of connection with the beavers that allows it to upload to the server. Now, another clarification to bring here is, and I mentioned this earlier, that we are already doing it. The difference is we're saying we want it to be we want it made part of the law, because currently it's only an INEC guideline. And the Supreme Court made a ruling post the 2023 election to say, if it's only in the INEC guideline, which we can even go into the debate of that judgment, but to say that if it's only in the INEC guideline, then it's not binding. And so we're saying, okay, put it in the law, let it be binding. And so it's not a maybe, it is already being done. And even to reference the glitch you're mentioning in the 2023 election, the IREF portal worked during the the other elections, the governorship election, it was the presidential. And so there are other insinuations of what might have caused that interruption, and not necessarily to say that it was just an internet issue, because even by the time whatever was wrong was rectified, we realized that a number of polling units had actually uploaded those results. And so there was some form of there was an issue that INEC has also not been audited, or it has come to the public to really tell us what the scope of that issue is. So it's just that we as citizens have concluded on that, it was just an internet issue. I think that it was beyond just having internet issues, because at the back end there were results that were uploaded from different polling units. It was at the central end that people, the public couldn't view. And so the question is, why was the public not able to view? So these are the issues that we're saying, okay, if the Supreme Court is pushing back and saying it's not part of the law, let's put it as part of the law. So we know what are the things that we as citizens can push for or can demand accountability for.
But Jennifer, do you think that if this is included in the law, do you think that this will bring any sort of change in our electoral system? Because there are so many things that are captured in the law, Jennifer, that is not being implemented as we speak. It is not captured in the law to snatch the ballots. It is not captured in the law, regardless of the fact that we carry out these elections manually, right? All these things are not captured in the law, but we see it. So what is the guarantee that if the House, the Senate now say, okay, the people have called for this particular act to be passed into law, it should be binding by political parties, polling units, INEC, and whoever is involved in the whole electoral business? What is the guarantee that this would also be binding?
I will be a very typical Nigerian and African and throw a question back to you and say, what if we don't push for it? What happened? It's a case, the reason why we push for reforms, and that was my opening statement, is that we cannot sit on our hands and just say, since it is not going to be binding, we may as well not do anything about it.
Okay.
Because so if we have and the truth is, there are a lot of things that citizens and civil society organizations have pushed for that have sort of sanitized the process. If you're being honest, also, as messy as the electoral system may be, but the electoral system has consistently made progress from the days of ballot box snatching in 2007, and when by the time you just go down memory lane, there has been improvement. And a lot of times the people who sort of malign or work against these improvements are politicians. So now that we know that votes are being counted and votes count beyond, if you like to snatch ballot boxes, it may not amount to much if we have certain checks with the Beavers accreditation and other things. Then they have now turned to buying and selling of votes and turning it into money politics. So you will see that because of certain things that are being introduced, the politicians are having to change their tactics. And so we're saying, let's keep making it a little bit more challenging for them. Let's keep introducing some form of transparency. That's what we're saying. Some form of transparency. Let's stop doing let collation and an announcement of results stop being done in the dark, where it's a case of the more you see, the less you understand. Let's have it real time. Let's have it in the glare of public view, so that there are third party organizations like YIAGA that consistently send out observers in the field to validate side by side what INEC results the INEC results that are being announced. We're saying let's have that in the open so that third-party organizations like us can verify, can have the data, can rely on it, and that data is binding.
Okay.
All right. So, looking at the conversation as well, centered around the e-transmission of the result, and just taking leeway from some of the answers you've given so far, is this debate really about, I mean, talking about National Assembly as well, is this debate really about technology or just about keeping the results open so that the results can be influenced after voting? From your observation.
I really believe that this whole conversation is about transparency and accountability. That's the most important thing, which is why the focus on infrastructure may just be a distraction to what the main focus is. Nigerians are asking for accountability. They're asking for transparency. That's the main conversation. And yes, it may not be feasible to say we'll fix infrastructural challenges in 1 year. I mean, how many years of independence and we're still having to deal with infrastructural challenges? So we're not expecting that those challenges are going to be fixed in 1 year, but within the ambit of what is possible, within what we have, that other stakeholders over time have said that is possible, let us have transparent and accountable electoral processes.
Okay. I'm trying to question this conversation as much as possible and looking at loopholes and possibilities. Now, on Sunday, rather, at a book launch, the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, made mention of the fact that, in about 9 states, we might not be able to do e-transmissions because those 9 states does not have network, which is what you have addressed. You said, INEC said all of those states have at least 2G, which can be used in the process. Now, can you say that? Because a lot of civil society organizations and other, of course, Nigerian citizens have come out to say, even if 9 states out of 36 states are not able to transmit those results, let us have the states that are able to do it. We can start with having those states, and then we can figure out what to do with the other 9, because 9 states doing that manually will not be, we have done it before, so we can do a blend of both, right? But could Nigeria realistically implement this real-time e-transmission in all 176,000 plus polling units by 2027? And we're trying to be as realistic as possible with this conversation. And if not, what mix of technology and regulation could be optimal? Because if the whole technology thing is not going to work, what other options do we have to merge together to ensure that we still have transparency in the system?
Yes, you will have to put it clearly, or we will have to clarify that the push for electronic transmission is not the abolishing of the manual process.
Okay.
Consider it a 2-factor authentication.
Okay.
We're saying that a lot of times at the point of collation at the polling unit at the ward, there's a lag. So you finish voting, your electoral officer has tabulated the result and imputed in the on the form EC8, I'm not saying the form EC8A,
Okay.
and has announced it at the polling unit, right? Then we've had cases where people who follow maybe to the ward or to the local government now get to start shouting and saying, no, at our polling unit, this was not the results. This was not what we got in the end. How did the figures change between our polling unit and this ward level? Now you see what having the law or having a legal component of the electoral transmission does is, because you uploaded at that point, and because it is now a binding document on INEC, INEC will now have, is now mandated to draw on that and to put it side by side and say, oh, okay, there is actually a difference, or there is a disparity here. But if you remember in the 2023 election, when INEC was asked to do that for some of the results, INEC said it's not binding.
Okay.
So we're saying, okay, let's make it binding. Let's move that. So we're not saying that the e-transmission of results is going to abolish the manual transmission. No, it's going to be a side-by-side process. And even those 9 states that the Senate President mentioned, it's not in the entirety of those states. Some of these things have to as mathematical equation. And for instance, with YIAGA Africa, every time we release our validation of INEC results, we have something called a margin of error. A margin of error does not mean that there was a mistake made. It just means that give or take based on certain circumstances, this is what we are. Yes, this is what we arrived at. And so, how about those 9 states become the margin of error? And again, just to clarify and say that of all, if using data, because I don't know what data the Senate President was alluding to or referencing, yes, or of those 9 states, the data that we have seen and that we are using says that we have about 15,000 polling units thereabout, and so with the manual process still in place, we can now use those problematic polling units in quotes as the margin of error.
Okay.
All right. Hello, Jennifer. All right, so at this point, let's take a quick breather, and when we'll come back, we'll continue the conversation with Jennifer talking about the electoral amendment reform, as it says. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching the big conversation right here on Rapid Television, and we've been talking to Jennifer Dafwat, Communication Officer at YIAGA. We've been talking about the Electoral Act amendment. Hello, Jennifer. Thanks for being here with us. All right, let's talk about the timing of this amendment, Yvonne. This is 2026, and 2027 is just by the corner. Looking at the timing where this amendment is coming on board, do you also see the reality of it being implemented effectively if the Senate, even passes this? If this amendment is concluded, do you see it being implemented effectively within the short period of time that we have?
A lot of things that affect or impact our electoral process has to do with the will to do the things. After 2023 elections and after a number of the off-cycle elections, a lot of time we have had to focus on, was there a will to get this done? And where there's a will, hopefully, if INEC has the will, then INEC will be able to implement. And remember, I said that there's nothing new being brought into the picture. There's no novel thing. The IREF exists, the BVAS exist, the system in place, the current electoral guideline in place allows for that process, which is as soon as you're done voting, as soon as collation is done, at every point, at the polling unit, the ward, the results are supposed to be uploaded. So this system is in place. It's for it to continue and for the will to ensure that it works seamlessly. So I believe that where it is being passed, where it is passed into law, that it can be implemented. At least that is our position as a civil society group, that it's possible. We observe elections and we oftentimes have to make rapid, quick changes and adjust based on the body language of the electoral empire. So if we as a single unit organization are able to make certain changes as we go on based on the changes in the electoral space, then for sure we want to believe that an INEC as an organization and with an institutional power, with the kind of institutional power it has, it will be able to implement these things as long as political interference doesn't come in.
Talking about that political interference as well, one of the upsides for the e-transmission of results is the fact that it's being transparent and of course it's being secured. But there's also a possibility that these can be hacked, which is also one of the complaints or one of the reasons that the House has also brought on board as to why they're also delaying on even implementing these particular amendment as it is. So in situations like that, do you think INEC is even ready to ensure that the system is not hacked?
If the system that INEC already has not been hacked, remember, I keep reiterating the fact that this system is already in place. If the IREV, at least INEC has not come out to say the IREV has been hacked at any point between the 2023 elections and now, then I want to believe that they have what it takes to continue beefing up their systems. And technology, as we know it, is the checks that is required to keep it functioning at an optimal level has to be continuous. And I guess one of the things we will now start pushing for as concerned citizens is to say, once this electoral amendment is passed, INEC need, amongst the things that INEC must do in preparation for 2027, is to beef up its security systems. And
all right.
Are you about to say something?
Yes, I was about to say something, Jennifer, because our time is fast spent, so we just want to wrap up the conversation. And before we go, in 1 minute, I want you to just tell us what measurable impact e-transmission could have at reducing electoral litigation and disputes, which is one thing that, is very, very found in our electoral system.
Yeah, you will recall that I mentioned that part of the reason why we're asking that this to be embedded in the law is because of the Supreme Court is a litigation process that said the IREV and the uploaded results were not admissible in court as evidence and were not binding upon INEC. And so if that is now made a part of the process, I guess that people who truly have a reason to contest their elections now have real-time evidence that is admissible in court. And so I will believe that this will further improve the transparency of the process, even in litigation, not just in the elections itself, but in litigation.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your time with us this morning. We do appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. By the way, we like how optimistic you sound about everything. If lots of Nigerians find themselves this optimistic, I think we have solved about, let's say, 30% of the problem.
Well,
we work in the field. We work in the field and we see a lot of things. And the best you can do is hope for the best.
All right.
And hope that your efforts don't go to waste.
All right. Why hope it's not a strategy? Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a lovely day today. Thank you. Yeah. Well, the e-transmission is a conversation that is going to be in the social space for a long time, especially because Nigerians want it to work. Of course, we've been asking various questions. If the politicians can actually allow the use of technology to count the elections, why is it then difficult for them to allow the use of technology to also make sure that the results are being announced? And some of the conversation, some answers have been given to us anyways from our resource persons. A resource person rather who has shared with us her 2 cents on this particular matter. But in conclusion, Martha, what's your concluding thought here?
We'll just wait to see how this turns out. In no distant time, the Senate will be sitting again to redeliberate on this matter, and the clause that was taken out of that bill should be returned and should be enforced. This bill was captured in the 2022 Electoral Act as amended, and the clause of electronic transmission was taken out. That clause should be put back because, like our resource person just said, regardless of what happens, we cannot fold our arms rather to say it might not work. What if it works at the end of the day? What if it doesn't work? Now we know that the problem is not the systems that are being put in place or the structures that are being put in place. This is the people. When this doesn't work, we keep narrowing down our search till we get to the root of the problem.
Definitely.
And I think that this helps to a very great extent. But yes, I personally am looking forward to the meeting at 12 so that we know what happens from on there. The protest, did the protest work or was it just noise?
I will keep you updated on what the situation is, of course, as it unfolds. But that being said, this is all we're going to be taking on today's edition of the Rapid On. Do remember that you can follow us across all social media pages across our platforms at Rapid TV. You can get to watch all our episodes on our YouTube platform, which is at official Rapid TV. And wherever you are in the world, you can watch us live using our website www.arabianradiotv.com. My name is Victor. Okay.
And my name is Martha Alu. Have a lovely day ahead and we'll see you tomorrow.